I want to do is I'm going to show you from Dan's speech in Las Vegas, which was mules versus magicians. I want to actually mathematically explain to you how if you treat this model, the local lead generation model, the same way you might treat mutual funds or buying a real estate, like a rental real estate property, then this actually pencils out not only way better, but if you actually look at it in the long term in the scope of 5 or 10 years, sometimes we can be short-sighted in the decisions we make today. So, without further ado, how the spreadsheet's built out is you have your initial expenses on this column, column B, right? And so we see here that if you went to Donnie Done For You and you bought a site, it would be $300 if you outsourced it. Same with citations. You went to buy citations, you outsourced citations, you didn't want to do it yourself, you didn't want to do the site yourself, that'd be $290 at buycitations.com. Hosting, because of Weebly, if you use Weebly Designer, it's about $120 a year, being a little bit, more. I think it's $8 a month, but I made it 10 just for the sake of the spreadsheet. CallSling, $15 a month, so $180 a year. Domain name is $15 a year on the high end. You can get them from anywhere from 99 cents to $10 a year in a lot of places. Backlinks, I went all out. Like, you went and got some amazing backlinks from Influence, and you really, you bought more than you need, and just to really solidify the site, you spent $1,000 on backlinks, and then $150 for a mailbox, and then we have a miscellaneous column. I just wanted to have this for you guys in case you have some other expenses that aren't factored into my math here. But let's say it costs you $2,000 because you're going to outsource everything the most expensive way here, because you don't want to build the site yourself, you don't want to write your own content, you don't want to do your own citations, you don't want to do your own backlinking, and so you're going to spend all this money, $2,000, on these sites. Well, let's say that your first year on a site that is successful, let's say the first year you only make $3,000. So what that means is it takes 6 months for your site to rank. So let's say you spent 6 months, the site's finally ranked. Now 6 months from now, you're in a place where the site's ranked and you go get a client for $500 a month. Now, mind you, if you do the due diligence and the niche research, you can get sites to rank way faster if you're smart and strategic with your niches. And on top of that, average client's about $750 a month or $9,000 a year. So we're literally taking way more time than an average site ranks. We're going to take 6 months in the matrix. We're also going to take a way lower client. So $750 a month, we're going to take a $500 a month client. And then what we're going to say is, obviously, in future years, going forward, $500 a month going forward, right? Because now when it comes to year 2, year 3, year 4, it's pretty fair to say that now your client's happy with you, they're getting leads. And the nice thing is, because I factored in a lower dollar amount for the client, I factored in $500 a month, not $750. It kind of also equates to those weird times when you might lose a client, switch a client out, kind of all those worst case scenarios in the math. Now, let's talk about success rate. And this is really important, because success rate here is going to basically say that as we know, that not every single site is a grand slam, Babe Ruth home run out of the park, and you mint all this money. Really what happens in this model is some sites are kind of okay. They get the $500, $300 a month, maybe $700 a month, those clients. You get those astronomical exceptions, those $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month clients, because your site just does phenomenally well in a great niche. And then you just have sites that are still in ranking, or you're just struggling to find a client and they make no money, right? And it might take, and we've seen where some of the sites that they couldn't get a client on 2 years, 3 years down the line actually then end up getting clients for them, right? So sometimes you have to play the longer game. No different than sometimes you buy a real estate property and the house goes down in value for 3 years because it's 2009, 10, 11, right after 2008, and you have to hold on to this property that's a loss, but eventually you make your money out. Same thing applies here. Some sites are winners, some sites are losers. So in this model here, I said, what if we built 80? Now remember, probably our most successful job killing students, like you talk about the Corey Longs, the E-Pays, the Abduls, this is probably at the max end of what they've built in their JK careers of 4 years, right? So this is a really extreme example, but just to really paint the vision here, and let's say 40 of them are successful, so 40 out of 80. So that's a 50% success rate. That means that for every 2 sites you built, you eventually, in 6 months, you land a $500 a month client for half of them, for 40 out of 80. Now, what does that look like year one? Well, year one, you basically earned $120,000 because what happened was for 6 months you had no clients, and then on 40 websites you got $500 a month for 6 months. So that's 3,000 times 40. So that's $120,000 earned. And then on the spent, well, you spent this number here, 2,055, on 80 websites, right? Because you invested on all these sites. Not all of them made you money, but you invested on all 80 websites. So that's $164,000. Well, what happens year one? Well, crap, you lost $44,000, right? Which is insane. I mean, that's painful. That's brutal. You're probably at this point, you're probably mad at Dan. You're probably mad at someone like myself. You're probably, like, holy crap, I'm, $44,000 in the hole. Well, what happens year two? Well, year two, you actually have now collectively earned $360,000 because what's happened is you made $6,000 on 40 websites year two. So that's 6,000 times 40 is 240,000. But you've also made 120,000 the year before, right? So now you're 360,000 in the positive. But you've only spent, because now you're in reoccurring. You already made this initial investment. So you're now only on just things like hosting, that's an ongoing expense, the call sling number, which is an ongoing expense, and maybe you add some backlinks to the mix. You don't even need to do this. I just really wanted to paint a worst case scenario on these numbers for you. So let's say you even have $200 of just extra backlinks for whatever reason. Now, you have 515 of reoccurring expenses over 80 sites. And so when it comes to year two, you spent 205,600 total, right? 164,000 plus whatever that is. I think an extra 40,000 in reoccurring expense. So you've now, funny enough, by year two, you actually netted, and you're in the positive 154,000, which basically means that for the last 2 years, you've averaged out about 77,000 a year. So do you see how most students right here? Sorry, let me get my selection tool. Most students right here, they are already throwing in the towel. Oh my God, I can't believe this. This is so scary. And obviously, in real life, students are doing this on one or two sites, right? They built one site, two sites, three sites. That obviously they're not investing in 80 websites, but they're freaking out. This number is probably negative, right? Or this number is break even, or not yacht and helicopter money. It's not this insane pretty number that makes you get out of bed in the morning. But if you just saw the model through to year two, well, now you're already in this model here. You're profitable by a lot, and you can see how this follows year three all the way. Where, and I basically put this average year that if you divided out your total earnings, so by year 10, for example, you've taken in 2.3, basically $2.28 million. You've spent 535,000, which means you netted 1.7 million, which averages out to, across your 10 years on this investment, you basically, you've averaged 174,000 every year, which is a 32% return on every year. You're making 32% on your money if you look over 10 years. Now, just to put some perspective, I have a pretty, let's say a pretty significant sum of my money, my net worth, is in mutual funds, and my mutual funds average about 9 to 12%, right? So depending on which mutual fund, I have some that do better, some that do worse. So my portfolio average is about 11%. Some years it goes up 20%, some years it goes down, but averages about 11%. This is a 3x return on this investment. Now, of course, there's some time in it. There's skill. This is a business, so it's not, like stocks where I literally, other than checking it every 6 months, I don't look at it. But if I had to hedge my future towards a 50% failure rate to get a 32% investment, like this is where I should be spending my money going forward, which is what I'm doing. Instead of going and putting all this money on these slow things, like we need to treat this the same way we treat other investments and other things in our life. Now, I want to play with lower numbers because I know this is kind of like when you see these numbers, this looks really big and unrealistic, and you're like, hey, I don't even have the 164,000 to spend year one, which, by the way, totally get. I'm just trying to paint the picture here. So let's take a small example. Let's say you went and built 3 websites, or let's do let's say you built, yeah, 3 websites out of 10 sites, right? So it's a 30% success rate, which is, by the way, this is like you have to really try to have a 30%. Like, this is awful, right? You have to really make an effort to have a failure rate this bad where only 30% of your sites are landing clients. But let's take a 30% success rate. Well, even in this model here of a 30% success rate, where you spent $20,000 because you spent 10 times this number right here, 2,055 on initial investment, you lose $11,000 your first year. But then year two, you make 1,300, and then year three, you're netting $14,000. So basically, what ends up happening is just on this investment here of basically getting the ball rolling for 20 grand, which is really what you have to come out of pocket with. You have to come out of pocket with about $20,000 to do 10 sites in the most expensive outsource model, where you're not willing to do any of this with your own time or resources. Where you can get this number pretty much close to, you can get this number down to like $200-300 if you didn't factor in, if you did backlinking by yourself, you did citations by yourself, and you built your content by yourself. But even in this worst case scenario, you forked $20,000, and over the course of 5-10 years, that $20,000 is making you $8,000 a year, right? Which is nuts. $8,000 to $10,000 over 10 years, which is a 15% average annual return on your money. So I really think we can be really short-sighted sometimes. Let's say we play with better numbers. Let's say you have the 750 a month client for 6 months, which is 4,500 right there, and then that is 9,000 year two. You can see how now you're at a 53% return, and this 20,000 that you had to initially come up with is now basically $36,000 a year in income for you if you play the game long enough, right? So hopefully this makes sense from a mathematical perspective of every single year of what's happening with your business. But I really want to show you that if you guys look at these numbers, then you're not going to have the same fear, and you're not going to look at your business as, oh my God, what happened year one? You're going to really see the long-term potential, and why people like Ipe, who for the last 4 years have been building sites, why is that 40, 50K a month? Well, this is why. Because he played the long game, and year one he sacrificed, year two he sacrificed, and by the time you get to year four, year five, it's so lucrative. It's like you have this insane income where you're making more than surgeons that you can't even believe it. And that's the reason why some people are way more successful in the space, is they've seen it longer than just the first year. Thanks so much.